Chiefs, obviously you got to go get to the Broncos. With Pittman just being the absolute monster and machine that he is.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Russell Wilson, I think, out of all the quarterbacks that we mentioned, all the young gunslingers, outside of Andrew Luck, I think Russell Wilson, the next best gunslinger, because he just has so much potential, and despite being such a short 5'11", he still can make plays throwing the ball down the field, has a rocket arm, and despite Colin Kaepernick's resurgence and going farther in the postseason, Russell Wilson, I think, in the long run, we haven't yet seen any inconsistencies. This man is hard at work, day in and day out. First one in, last one into the film room, and just is a solid contributor to the football team. Colin Kaepernick, a little inconsistent, and boy, I just think that overall, Russell Wilson has the tools that Colin Kaepernick doesn't to make plays with his feet, where while he may not have exceptional talent at the wideout position, gives his guys a chance by eluding that pass rush.
I see this team, and they went 12-4 this season. You give them credit. They actually lose to playoff teams. And you always want to win against playoff teams, but they did beat the Green Bay Packers, who is their next opponent. They'll be playing them next year. And that will be fun to watch. But I look at this team in a season in review. I say one of their best games of this season. Man, I have to go with probably the Arizona game, 23-20. That was one of their closest games, and that was one of the most exciting games I got to watch, Nick. And I look at
the Cardinals had so much to play for, and they just came through in the end. That was a fantastic finish.
And then another game I gotta say is Green Bay. Green Bay was a great game too, and that's their next opponent for the playoffs.
We take a look at both of these teams, though, too, and it just seems to me that offensively there's just so much more going for the Packers, ironically enough, where it may be another good game. We're talking a team that offensively ranks in the top 5, including 133 yards rushing the football. Robert, going into the year, did you expect Green Bay to average that much on the ground? Eddie Lacy in that two-headed running attack with James Starks has been nothing short of brilliant there for Green Bay. How do you stop it if you're San Francisco? It just seems to me like it'll be a great matchup, run defense against that Eddie Lacy-led running offense.
Well, the first game, Eddie Lacy didn't really get to prove himself at all that game. He caused the fumble, and the Niners recovered. That really did hurt the Packers a ton, but that means they had to make Aaron Rodgers throw the ball. And what the Niners did well during that game was they really stopped that running game with Eddie Lacy. And I think that's what they got to do this game too, make Aaron Rodgers throw, because Aaron Rodgers is still not 100%. I mean, he still got the win at Chicago, but we got to see what they do. I mean, they're going to be at home. It's going to be 10 degrees at Lambeau. So the Niners haven't really played in the cold all season. I look at it, and this is where they've been away. They've been at Seattle, which wasn't that cold yet. They're at St. Louis. They're at Tennessee. They're at Jacksonville, but they were in London for that game. They were at New Orleans. They were at Washington, at Tampa Bay, and at Arizona. So they really have not been much. They haven't been in the cold weather yet this season. And, I don't like when people say, oh, they might not win the game because of the weather. Well, they're still going to play. Well, they might not play the best, but they'll still play pretty well, even in weather. And, Nick, I want to go to you on this as our NFL analyst. Do you think that weather makes a big difference in some games?
It does to teams that are traditional West Coast offensive, air it out, finesse football teams. But the Niners are anything but that. We all know that defense travels and a great running game travels. And the Niners have both of that. We talk about Eddie Lacy running off with that Green Bay running attack. Well, guess what? The Niners average more yards per game running the football as well, and defensively ranking in the top 5. This team is fantastic running and playing defense. And Colin Kaepernick, a resurging third-year quarterback, has played a lot better as of late. And not only that, this Niner team offensively now has all of their core players back. They won back in week 1. That was a long time ago, but with the injuries front being back to what the Niners like and the Green Bay injury situation being as bad as it is, I think that the Niners, if they stop that running game, if they get on them early and force Green Bay to throw it, might as well pack your bags by halftime, because San Francisco, if they limit them to a performance that they did against Chicago, despite the win, the Bears' last-ranked defense was able to get some key turnovers against Aaron Rodgers. So this is still a team in San Francisco. You get on them early, and this game is over. No weather, no other factors there in that game. Forget the 10-degree pregame kickoff. If this game is 14, 17-0 San Francisco, or even 10-0, in fact, 2-possession lead, too much for Green Bay.
And Steve, I want to go to you for just looking at the preview for next year on Sunday when the Niners do play the Packers. You know, you look at their season, they went 12-4, had a pretty good season. Only 4 losses, but all the playoff teams, they did beat Green Bay, though. So, you know, you look at the Green Bay, you look from week 1 to now. How much has the Green Bay Packers changed, and how big of a difference will it be to the Niners?
For the Packers, the problem I have with them is that they just had a returning Aaron Rodgers. That actually could be a good thing, actually. You know, their win last week was a little bit lucky. We ended up being bad open, so that late in the game. Usually not going to happen that often, especially against the Bears, but I can't forget about that game. From week 1, obviously the Packers didn't have a game plan in which the Niners were going to attack them, because the Packers looked like fools. And I think that the Niners could be doing that, could be, you know, could have Packers make one thing and do another thing. And that's just another thing that Jim Harbaugh could do just right out of his sleeve. But on the other side, you know, the Packers, you know, they're rejuvenated, you know. Aaron Rodgers coming back to the office is looking good. Deits is going to be 100%, you know, having a pretty good game last week. You know, there's some differences. You know, a couple of guys getting cut from the Niners, a couple of injuries that have, you know, slowed down the team from coming, you know, not another 5 seed, but, you know, could have been number 1 seed. But, you know, for the Niners, I see them just, like Nick said, the ground game is going to be big for the Niners, with Frank Gore and probably Kendall Hunter with a couple carries, and Colin Kaepernick taking some carries as well. And then going to Vernon Davis and Antoine Bolton, you know, pretty much the game plan on the passing end for the entire year for the Niners.
All right, let's
basically, Eddie Lacy plays well. The Packers have a chance.
I mean, otherwise you don't just Eddie Lacy will be taken out of this game, and the Packers don't really have much of a chance, because I still believe that Aaron Rodgers is still not 100%, as Steven said. I mean, this Bears defense has gotten to Aaron Rodgers, and that's one of the worst defenses in the league. Now, let's go to 2 more questions to answer. Your best offensive player from the Niners and your best defensive player of the year. Let's go with Steven first.
For offensive, I gotta go. I want to go with 2 guys. I want to go with the co-offensive player of the year for the Niners. The 2 wide receivers, Vernon Davis, the most tight end, and then Antoine Bolton. These 2 guys have been the entire world, the entire year from Kaepernick, mainly because there's been a lot of injuries. Crabtree has gotten a half a year. Manningham, Warren Chief, you know, AJ Payton being traded like in the preseason. You know, not a lot of stuff after you have Vernon Davis and Antoine Bolton as your top receivers. So those guys flipping the load perfectly, and you know, Bolton showing what he can do from week 1 against the Packers. You know, that was very scary. You know, he was kind of a monster year, and that's what he did. Other than have a year like he always has. And then the defensive player of the year is definitely going to be Bob team here. Highlighted by the nationally televised Pick 6 against the Falcons huge. So the win against the Niners this year was, more than we expected. More of a packed performance here rather than, when they bought a ball. So Bowman is my defensive player of the year.
I want to go to mine. Let's go with, if I had to go with offensive player of the year, I would probably have to say, let's go with Vernon Davis. He had 52 catches for 850 yards for 13 touchdowns and averaged 16 yards a catch. A man that has been reliable all season long. He's been injured a couple of games, but he's been reliable, and he's been one of the best tight ends in this game, and I got to give him credit for that. Now, the man I have to give is Denaro Bowman. Bowman has been a man he's been solid this year, and a lot of people say he's better than Willis. I think that I could see it this year that he was better than Patrick Willis, but Patrick Willis is still, I believe, one of the hardest hitters in the game, and a linebacker you just can't get through. But also, Denaro Bowman has really learned from Willis over the seasons, and Bowman has really learned, but a lot of people are saying Reed has been a big man that stepped up and took Deshaun Goldson's place. I agree with that too, but I think Bowman is still defensive player of the year on that team. Now let's go to Nick Rice. Nick Rice, before you go, we want to know offensive player for the Niners and your defensive player for the Niners.
Well, Robert, I want to congratulate you because, yes, on the offensive side, Vernon Davis is your all-star receiving threat of the year. I would have him as the best player on the offensive side, but I would give almost a 1B rating for Anquan Bolden, who produced some very solid numbers, and while in the lineup, including that Week 1 game against the Packers, has been Colin Kaepernick's security blanket. I mean, a lot of notoriety has been on the return of Michael Crabtree, but when Anquan Bolden is in the lineup and when he produces like he normally can, some great things happen for that offense. Defensive side of the ball, obviously Navarro Bowman. The big Monday night game put him on the scene, and Patrick Willis, boy, an off year for him, but I do want to give a surprise of the season. I think none of us saw this coming in the defensive secondary with Carlos Rogers being so good, Dante Whitner, with Eric Reed coming in there as a rookie. Of all people, Tremaine Brock, the fourth-year cornerback, the product of Long Beach High School. The first time he even saw play time on the field is this year. He made the big play on the Monday night game and has 5 INTs this season. We're talking Tremaine Brock, a guy that has been hidden under the radar with so many all-star defensive nominees there for the Niners. But Brock comes up big, and when his number has been called, like every other player on that Niner team, when his number is called, he is the next man up, and he delivers. Tremaine Brock, the surprise player of the year, and maybe one more surprise player, just because I didn't see this coming either. One of the bigger under-the-radar free agent acquisitions was signing Phil Dawson instead of, obviously, Robert, a thing or two about the previous kicker here for San Francisco, but Phil Dawson, boy, playing some fantastic ball, only missing 3 kicks all year long, a solid free agent acquisition.
Oh man, I remember we talked about David Akers all the time. That was the good old days.
A couple more than 3 kicks
last year. But he didn't do that bad for Detroit. I gotta give him credit for going to a different team and actually doing something there.
Right.
So, I give it to David Akers. Nick, I want to thank you so much. And I know it's going to be sad, but, it's going to be our end of the year for national sports. And I know you and me will be hosting that, and we hope to get other people on as well. Nick, it's always a pleasure to have you on as our NFL analyst out in San Diego, and congrats on the Chargers.
Obviously a pleasure. You're going to hear our thoughts on the Chargers sneaking their way. As an understatement, they basically had no pulse going into that week, but figured out a way to get it done. Not only the Chargers, but we'll take a look at all of the year action here from National Sports Radio Station. Robert, thank you for having